Sports Bucks with Steve takes a deeper dive into the world of sports and the impact of money, fan debates, current sporting news, and offers financial tips. Coach Steve is a certified financial fiduciary and wealth coach who specializes in retirement income tax-free strategies for individuals and business owners throughout the country.
Sports Bucks with Steve. A lot has happened over the last couple of weeks in the world of sports. Pac-12, or is it Pac-4? Or are they just simply packing it in? A lot of movements, a lot of things happening in the world of sports, with the Pac-12 now being reduced down to 4 teams: Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. Cal being currently courted, potentially Cal and Stanford, by the ACC. Well, we'll get into a little bit of that, and we'll get in a little bit of this. But I want to talk about the fight that took place a couple of weeks ago between Terrence Bud Crawford and Earl the Truth Spence Jr. Mega fight that happened and took place in Las Vegas, which turned out to be a total destruction. I want to hear from We Did It Together. That was Terrence Bud Crawford, the new undisputed 147-pound champion of the world, the only male fighter in the 4-belt era to now have become undisputed in 2 weight classes: junior welterweight, which is 140 pounds, and now 147 pounds, undisputed welterweight champion. Clarissa Shields is the first to do it in the 4-belt era as a female boxer, and now it's it's Bud and Clarissa Shields that are the only undisputed champions in the 4-belt era. Listen, this is Sports Bucks with Steve. We appreciate you turning in and listening once again and watching our YouTube video. We so are excited about our relationship with ESPN Charlotte, with KCA Radio, and all over the podcast world. This Wealth Coach Steve. You're listening to and watching Sports Bucks with Steve.
Hi, my name is Lily. My mom and dad used to fight about money all the time. Then one day, I heard them talking about this guy, some uncle I never knew, called Uncle Sam. Well, they say this Uncle Sam guy wanted them to pay him like $1 gazillion, and they didn't have $1 gazillion. So they called this company they heard on the radio called the Tax Doctor. And the Tax Doctor worked with Uncle Sam's people. I think they're called the IRS. And they were able to work it out so my mom and dad didn't have to pay Uncle Sam very much money at all. So now mom and dad are happy, and I'm happy too. Thanks, Tax Doctor.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, call now and pay less.
Call 800-268-1055. That's 800-268-1055. 800-268-1055.
Now, more than ever, all U.S. veterans need your help. If you have an old car, truck, or van, you can donate it today and help them. And they'll come pick it up for free. Plus, the money raised helps our nation's disabled veterans and their families. Call the number on your screen right now. Within a few days, we'll come and tow it away for free, running or not. And the proceeds greatly help U.S. veterans. So please call right now.
And this is Sports Bucks with Steve. Help a veteran in need, indeed. Veteran card donations, tax doctor, all of our sponsors. We are excited about Bag Health Inc. In addition to RX Heroes, My Virtual Docs, the list goes on. And our new sponsor, the Super Rolf, thesuperrolf.com. Check it out. The Super Rolf and tax doctors leading the way for us. We so appreciate it. But going back to Saturday night, and we've labeled and named this show Fist Buds for you. Terrence Bud Crawford, a.k.a. Black Panther, is what I've nicknamed him. I've been watching Bud fight for a number of years. Back, I believe I watched him fight against Breeders Prescott when I started watching and saying, who is this guy? He's got some skill set. Then he eventually was fighting Yuriorkis Gamboa, which he was actually the underdog. Yuriorkis Gamboa was a pound-for-pound undefeated fighter at the time that was moving up in weight, and Bud dropped Gamboa, I believe, 4 or 5 times, and I said, okay, this guy might be something. Plus, he had a last name that I like. Last name is Crawford. I'm Steve Crawford, Stephen Crawford, the retirement wealth coach, a.k.a. Sports Bucks with Steve. So, Coach Steve. So, but I did want to play for you guys another video where the great Roy Jones was talking about the fight. Let me just kind of run down the fight for those who might have missed the fight. Somehow you were on another planet, or we don't know what exactly you were doing. You missed the fight. But this was a fight between, I arguably say that this is the biggest fight that boxing could offer really since Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, but in my opinion, bigger in the sense of purist. And what I mean by it is we're talking about two guys that were both in their primes. Now, Terrence Crawford is 35, Spence is 33. Mayweather and Pacquiao fought, I believe, when Mayweather might have been 36, Pacquiao might have been 33 or 34, but they had a lot of tread on those tires, right? Mayweather was, we're talking, these guys were not at the prime peak of the pretty boy Floyd era, let alone when he became Money Mayweather. This was the beginning of the Money Mayweather. Pretty boy Floyd Mayweather was something else, and still arguably the greatest to me. He has an argument for the greatest fighter of all times, TBE. His record is undefeated. He's beat the most world champions. You can argue with the wall talking about when he beat these people. And I've heard people say silly stuff like he waited for Pacquiao to get, he was older than Pacquiao. So that doesn't make sense. So, but I'll say that the TBE, the best ever, is arguable, but he's definitely in the room as far as the top 10 greatest fighters, in my opinion, all time. And so is Manny Pacquiao. But this particular fight, to me, had, from a purist standpoint, these were two undefeated in their prime guys. One in Earl the Truth Spence Jr. being a unified champion of the WBC, the IBF, and also the WBA, which he just took that strap from Yadinis Ugas, where he stopped Yadinis Ugas due to his fracturing his orbital bone, which a lot of the Earl Spence fans were saying he was going to do this to Terrence Bud Crawford. And so that was something that was being lobbied about and by his fans who thought that, Bud was too small and Bud hadn't fought no one. And as Bud mentioned, he's talked about it in other interviews, how he stopped his last 11 opponents at welterweight. No one has gone a distance with Terrence Bud Crawford at the welterweight division. So there was a lot of credit that was being given to the PB side of the street. Earl Spence said that and threw that out there. You're on the wrong side of the street. Get a belt. Bud got a belt, the WBO, and he was still on. Now he's on the wrong side of the street. The PBC guys, what Terrence was mentioning was that they tried to blackball him. They wouldn't even mention his name. Showtime, Fox, they wouldn't even mention Bud as if he wasn't one of the top fighters in the world, if not the pound for pound number one fighter in the world, which many had him ranked. And it was a discussion between, was the winner of this fight going to be the best, going to be considered pound for pound best fighter in the world, or was it Inoue who just destroyed pretty boy, schoolboy Fulton, Stephen Fulton, in their match with Inoue moving up to 122 pounds and taking both unified belts from Stephen Fulton in dominating fashion. And so I give Inoue a lot of credit, but Bud Crawford is the best fighter in the world. He has been, since he's risen to the level of that he's on, he's been the best fighter in the world. And he solidified that with a complete destruction of Earl Spence in 9 rounds. And the fight could have ended earlier. And what we saw was Bud was stronger than Spence. There was always this doubt that Spence was the bigger, stronger guy. But no, you could see when he shoved Spence, I was like, oh, that lets you know that you in for a long night. And Bud is squatting 400 and something pounds. I haven't heard the same sort of information on Spence. I think this is a lesson for a lot of people when you judge a book by a cover and you think that because somebody is smaller, you're automatically going to be stronger or better. You can find around and get yourself hurt doing that. So I've always been the type of person that I don't judge a person by their appearance. I'm going to judge you by what your ability is and hopefully by the character that you display. And so Bud always showed good character. That's why I picked him to win. He was is my favorite fighter today. But when I looked at the fight, I just said, Earl has had an advantage against the guys he's fought. When he fought Kell Brook to take the title back in 2017, when he went over there to England to face Kell Brook was coming off of a destruction loss to Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, where he shattered one of his orbital bone sockets at 160 pounds. And his very next fight was against the number 1 IBF contender, which is Earl the True Spence Jr. In that fight, Kell Brook was actually beating Earl Spence to the punch, better jab, was winning the fight. But as I tried to explain to a lot of the Earl Spence fans who wanted to give Earl a lot of credit for going over there, and he did deserve credit for going over there and beating Kell Brook. But what they didn't want to recognize and give credit for was, listen, Kell Brook came down from 160 pounds to fight at 147. Maybe it was hard for him to make the weight. They didn't want. That's the excuse now that's coming out for Earl is, oh, he was at 147 too long and he couldn't make the weight. He made the weight, and he had the ability to rehydrate without a hydration clause, unlike the Garcia Tank fight. Even though still, the fight, if the weight is at a weight, that's the weight. You can you weigh in, and you don't have to weigh in necessarily the next day. So he was good to go. He got a chance to rehydrate himself just like Bud did. But there was no excuse given for Kell Brook, who was beating Earl. And then what happens when you have to make a weight cut? It typically affects you later on in the fight, where you start to get drained, body shots start to take their effect on you. And that's what you saw. But credit to Earl Spence for getting the job done, won the title back in 2017. He then was able to take on a big money fight where he was able to fight Mikey Garcia, who was moving up from 135 pounds, was a lightweight champion, moving up 2 weight classes to fight a bigger, stronger, more skillful Earl Spence. And it was a one-sided win. But I noticed something in that fight. He never really hurt Mikey Garcia in terms of where you said, oh, Mikey's in big trouble. He's looking like he's going to fall. And I thought that was a telltale sign that he didn't really hurt Mikey Garcia. So this supposedly great big puncher was not looking as dominant or as powerful as they made it out to be. Then he had a fight with obviously Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is a really good counterpuncher, but as Terrence Bud said, he has short arms. He's not fast. He calls himself swift, but he's actually slow. And he has beaten no one of note at 147 pounds. He's lost to everybody. So they were giving Earl a lot of credit for beating Danny. I gave Earl credit because that was after the car accident, but he came and beat Danny Garcia right after his car accident that happened the night or the day after the fight with Sean Porter. And so he then fought after Danny Garcia. Obviously, he had the unification. He had beaten Sean Porter to win before he fought Danny Garcia. After he fought Mikey Garcia, he had a unification fight with Sean Porter in which was a highly disputed fight. There's some people that still think Sean Porter won that fight. I believe Earl won the fight. I had it 7 rounds to 5. I gave it in 1 extra point for the knockdown for Earl Spence. So I thought he won the fight. So 115, 112 is what I had. So, and then when you looked at a dog of a fight in that one, I said, well, he didn't really He caught Sean Porter, but Sean Porter was kind of off balance. He got right up, but he won the fight, in my opinion. Then he has the fight, obviously, with Danny Garcia, which happened after the Sean Porter fight, which happened after the accident, of course. And it was a good performance by Earl. I thought Danny Garcia did not press as much as he should have, but he's more of a counterpuncher. I thought he had opportunities in that fight. He landed a nice shot that kind of stunned Earl, but he didn't capitalize on it. I think he ran out of time in that round is what happened. So I just looked at certain things, and then the Ugas fight was in particularly an impressive fight for Earl Spence, where Ugas, who had beaten Manny Pacquiao to win the WBA championship, was now fighting Earl in the unification fight where Earl was WBC and IBF. Ugas was WBA. Earl was able to beat Ugas, fractured his orbital bone, which got everybody talking what he's going to do to Terrence Crawford. But I want to play you something where Bud talked about what they were going to say. He predicted this was going to happen when he did fight, when he finally fought Earl Spence. They were not going to give him his credit. They were going to say that Earl Spence was weight drained. He stayed at 147 too long. It was like Bud was the prophet. And so check this out.
Vegas a New Year. Then when I stop, they're gonna say he's too small. Hey, so when I stop him, y'all gonna say he was too weak. On my mic. And he stayed at 147 too long. Okay. Crazy. Careful what you're smoking out. Ask me, hey, who the hardest been hit by? Hey, look, every person that you name, ask him what I done did to him. Ask me who the hardest been hit by. It don't matter. If you drop him and I drop him, what that mean? They both got dropped. I knew he was gonna be here. And you knew I was gonna pull up. That's why I came. Did you know I was gonna pull up? Oh God, I knew he was gonna be here. Right here. Hey, see, right here. Did you know I got a text message? 3 o'clock. And you got a FaceTime for me and you didn't answer. I don't know your number. Now you know, save it.
Save it is what Bud says, but save this whooping and recognize the fact that what he said has been nothing but coming out of the Earl Spence fan base. I've even seen Triple G's former trainer, his name escapes me right now, talking about, yeah, he was weight trained. You could tell he was weight trained because he picked him. He picked Earl Spence to win, and he was so wrong, he couldn't have been right. So when you look at that fight, the fight obviously stopped in the 7th round. I'm sorry, in the 9th round. Earl Spence was down 3 times. He was bloodied, buckled, and bruised. And finally, Harvey Dock mercifully ended the punishment at 2 minutes and 32 seconds of the 9th round. Of course, Earl protested. Earl's a warrior. So shout out to Earl Spence because in all seriousness, he's a warrior because he kept getting up and kept coming back, but no excuses. We were at a big fight party. Shout out to my boy Monty and his family and everybody that was there. Even shout out to PJ Washington, who happened to come to the Hornets player was there. I call him nephew because he's with my young niece that he's with now. And a shout out to PJ and the family. But big crew that was there. Everybody had a good time, and they were all Earl Spence fans except me and one other guy and my pops. And I tried to tell them, I said, they were talking about big fish, and I said fish fry, and that's exactly what happened. And one of the gentlemen, Biggs, asked me what round because they know I kind of give these predictions, and a lot of times they come true. I said 8th or 9th round, it's going to be over with. I wasn't saying it was going to be Earl because I recognize about Earl is slower than Terrence Crawford. He's not as athletic as Terrence Crawford. He can't switch hit like Terrence Crawford, can go southpaw or fight orthodox. He has a shorter reach than Terrence Crawford, which is the one thing he's always had an advantage on. And I tried to tell people, I don't believe he's stronger than Bud Crawford. And we saw that. So Crawford is now the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. We'll see what happens if they meet again. If you look at Bud's, is as I said, first fighter in the 4-belt era to be undisputed junior welterweight. He was the lineal lightweight champion when he went to Scotland to beat Ricky Burns at 135 pounds. And obviously he was a lineal and undisputed champion at 140 pounds. He is the lineal and undisputed 147-pound welterweight champion, and his eyes are now on Jamel Charlo, who is the undisputed 154-pound champion. I think they just stripped him of the WBL belt to give to Tim Tszyu, but that will be interesting. Now, Charlo has a big fight next month against Canelo Alvarez, which he is definitely the underdog in that fight. But Canelo moved up from 154, which is his original weight class, all the way up to even 175. And he is one of the biggest superstars, if not the superstar in boxing. So it'll be interesting to see how that fight plays out. And then how does Charlo come down and to try to fight Bud at that next weight class? Now, one of the big seminal moments was before the fight even started, you got Eminem walking Bud out to lose yourself in the moment. You got to let it go. That was epic. And he had a fish net on him, which to me was the signal as he catching this fish. So by round 2, Spence was floored for the first time in his career after he came into the ring and had this look of, okay, this is business. He basically, it was over with. Once he went down, it was over with. He was out jabbing the guy that had the supposedly great jab, jabbing in between the shots, catching them with counters, uppercuts, hooks, crosses. It was a master class, to put it mildly. And when you look at the total punch numbers, it says Crawford, who beat Spence to the punch time and time again, outlanded Errol Spence 185 to 96 in total punches. I didn't see 96 punches landed by Errol Spence, including an 87 to 33 edge in jabs. Now, Spence is supposed to be the better jabber. And 98 to 63 in power punches. Though he's a smaller man, Crawford entered the ring with a 100% knockout ratio in 7 welterweight fights and remained perfect in what was arguably, as I said, the most important boxing match since Floyd Mayweather defeated Manny Pacquiao in 2015. Spence, to his credit, made no excuses. He said he was simply the better man tonight. ESPN's number 2 welterweight and number 4 pound for pound boxer at the time. He said he was using his jab and my time was a little bit off. He was catching me in between shots. I make no excuses. Now, there's a bi-directional rematch clause that Spence can trigger within 30 days of the fight, and he vowed to be a lot better the second time around. But the winner is able to choose if the return bout takes place at 147 or 154 pounds. Spence said he hopes it will be at 154 pounds. Spence went on to say, hell yeah, we got to do it again. I'm going to be a lot better. I'm going to be a lot closer. It's probably going to be in December because the rematch is supposed to happen before the end of the year. At this point in time, I don't know if it's going to happen. We had a lot of problems getting this fight made over the years, so I might tip my hat to Errol Spence for accepting the fight with Terrence Crawford and not allowing politics that were in place with PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, and their disdain with Top Rank and their mutual disdain of never working together and hardly working together. I think Spence could definitely take some time off. And I want to play you a video real quickly before we take a short break. I'm not really going anywhere, but we're going to I got to pay some bills, make sure we get our sponsors in. But listen to what the legendary Roy Jones Jr. had to say about what Errol Spence should do if he was advising Errol in terms of this fight with Terrence Crawford.
Does it look any different in your opinion at 54?
As a coach, I want to let Earl go get everything checked out to make sure he's neurologically okay. If his mind, everything's okay and his body's okay, then we'll consider a fight at 154, but we need some time to make some adjustments because we haven't been forced to make adjustments in our career. Truthfully speaking, we should sign a rematch clause, but tell them let us have 1 or 2 fights between. Secondly, we don't have to pull ourselves down so far in weight at 154. So maybe we won't be as sluggish with the weight. You understand me? Because we know Earl been killing himself for years now to make 47. So with Bud not ever having that drastic weight loss, never having gone through no drastic car accident or nothing like that, anybody you put in front of him, he gonna take him apart. If he just goes in and fights Bud again,
anybody you put in front of him, he will take them apart. Is what the great Roy Jones Jr., aka y'all must have forgot, has said. Now, this is one thing I did want to share with you guys. They asked Bud about obviously fighting some of these other folks and, you know, the the big fight with potentially another fight with Boots Ennis, the young welterweight contender, Jerron Boots Ennis, who's undefeated and fantastic athlete. He may be he's bigger than Bud for sure, and his hands may be even faster. So that would be an interesting, obviously a big mega fight from a purist standpoint. It's a big fight. From a commercial standpoint, not many people outside of being a purist is aware of who Jerron Boots Ennis is. So it's probably not, it's a lose-lose situation for Bud to take on Jerron Ennis, because outside of some boxing fans, they don't really know who Jerron Boots Ennis is. He hasn't fought anyone yet that you would say, okay, this is who Jerron Boots Ennis is. I think Boots, even though he's deserving of a title shot and he's extremely dangerous, he's more dangerous than Errol Spence is to me, to Bud Crawford. He needs to fight a Danny Garcia or Keith Thurman, or Sean Porter's retired, or Udanis Ugas. I like to see him in against a guy like that, where he could build his name, where against a guy that people know. And then if Terrence Crawford is still at 147, get that fight. So there was talks on a potential rematch with Spence. And of course he says, well, I don't think he should retire. He said, I think he should take a little time off, get his mind right, and get back in the gym and get back focused, because, I never took a loss in the professional rankings, but I know how that could affect you mentally, being at this high level and losing the way you lost. This is obviously what Crawford is saying. He says you start questioning yourself. You start asking yourself certain questions. Do I still got it? Am I getting old? Am I slipping? You start asking yourself all different types of questions that you got to answer. So I would just tell him, you're a great fighter. Take a little time off and come back and do it again. They asked also about if he thought the referee stoppage was appropriate. He said, for sure. But I think his corner should have stopped it in the 7th round. And he said, I feel as if they believed in Earl, but at the same time, they should have saved their fighter from himself. Because as fighters, we're going to keep fighting until there's no fight left. But at the point where they see that there's no possible way for him to win, now they're banking on something lucky, a knockout, dramatic to happen, and that can cause for serious damage and get hurt in a way that they can't get back from. He said on who he's fighting next, he said he doesn't know. He's just going to sit back and explore his options. And then, of course, they asked him about who I mentioned earlier about Jerron Boots Ennis. He said, listen, right now in my career, a lot of people like Boots this, Boots that. He said, fighting Boots is a lose-lose situation. I win. They're going to say, oh, well, he was young. He wasn't ready. He was talented. He was skillful. But you got the experience over him. You got so much more than this kid who never been tested before. He said, me fighting Boots would be like, okay, well, you beat Boots. It's not a mega fight. Bud is saying, I'm looking for big challenges. I'm trying to go up in weight and fight Charlo, because that's something that's history in the making. There's a lot at stake. There's nothing really at stake with fighting Boots. I'm at the tail end of my career. I'm trying to make things make sense. Where I'm at in my career right now, I done fought my butt off to get where I'm at, where I am, and deserve to do whatever the blank I want to do. And I don't care what nobody say, how anybody feel, or any of that. He also made a comment, and this is obviously the comparison that's going to be made on people comparing him to Mayweather. I respect it. I always say Terrence Crawford against nobody. He said, I'm sorry, he didn't say nobody. He says, I respect it. I always say Terrence Crawford against anybody. I respect the hell out of Floyd. He's been a fighter that I've looked up to his whole career ever since I was a little kid, and he paved the way for a lot of us fighters. So I got to always pay homage to the OG. It's great that my name is being mentioned with the greats now at the welterweight division. And finally, on who he thinks wins the Canelo versus Charlo fight, Bud says, I got Canelo. I think he's going to be a good fight. I think a lot of people sleeping on Charlo, but he's skillful. He's big. He's bigger than Canelo, even though Canelo at a higher weight. This is true. I think Canelo going to be stronger than him. I think Canelo's going to be more powerful than him. But at the same time, I think Charlo's got the boxing skills to make it a competitive fight. Use his jab, straight punches, and don't get caught up with all that feints and stuff. He said, I think it'll be competitive. Lastly, as we end this Just Buds for You, I want to talk a little bit about the money aspect of the Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence fight and how much they made. So according to I believe this is Dan Rayfield, who's a legendary reporter, and Mike. This is per Dan Rayfield. Originally, Crawford talked about some unnamed folks with a hedge fund guaranteeing purchases of $25 million for himself and Spence. But Dan Rayfield said that as of August 3rd, both fighters did make $25 million apiece after generating 675,000 domestic buys, grossing $55 million, and having a gate of $21 million. So that's not a bad day's work for boxing's undisputed number one pound for pound guy. We'll take a quick commercial. Got to pay some bills, but we're going to end this about our last thoughts about the Pac-12 demise as we check this out.
It's a bird!
It's a plane!
No, it's Super Roth!
Okay, a gimmicky opening for a commercial about Super Roth Universal Life Insurance, but I'm sure it got your attention. Now, what is a Super Roth, you ask? It's a permanent indexed universal life insurance that's totally liquid and easily accessible once it matures. Can be used to supplement retirement savings or a death benefit, or both. Has no income or contribution limit. Has no 5-year rule like Roth IRAs. Has no 10% penalty for accessing the funds before age 59 and a half. Oh, and the average historical returns are 5 to 7% annually, tax-free. Super Roths also lock in gains, which means you don't lose your money when the market is down. Sounds incredible, right? Sounds super? Super Roths are the way of the future, specifically your future. To see if you qualify for a Super Roth, go online to thesuperroth.com. Who doesn't want affordable, comprehensive health care from big carriers such as Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield and Cigna with no deductibles? With CAG Health, that's exactly what you get, and so much more. Not only will you spend less for your health care, but you'll also have options for unlimited 24/7 virtual urgent care and 24/7 online therapy, thanks to My Virtual Docs. CAG Health also offers the RX Heroes discount card, which can save up to 80% on brand medications and gives you cashback rewards. Plus, with the Burn Wellness app, you can earn cashback while you burn calories. Take charge of your healthcare today with CAG Health and My Virtual Docs. For special exclusive savings, go online to espnclt.com. That's espnclt.com. And use the promo code ESPN730. That's promo code ESPN730.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Are you being audited or investigated? Has the IRS sent you a letter demanding payment? You may not owe what they claim. Make this free call to the tax doctor now. Let them negotiate with the IRS on your behalf.
800-663-5107. 800-663-5107. That's 800-663-5107.
And as we get ready to take this thing on home, I did want to talk a little bit about, as we talked about, the Pac-12 now being essentially the Pac-4. And it seems to be that it is now time for the Pac-12 to pack it in. So Pac-12 now down to Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford. Now, what happens with the remaining Pac-12? There's discussion about possible merger with the Mountain West Conference, which obviously is less money. And the Mountain West commissioner actually mentioned something about the Pac-12 merger not being a bad deal and them being able to capitalize potentially on the Pac-12's brand. But the Pac-12 and its member schools are used to $30 million at a minimum from the TV deal. Well, that's over now, in the words of Luther Vandross. So now, the Mountain West gets substantially less than that. So what do we do, Pac-12? What's your next move? Is there a merger? Don't know. We're going to see. But we do know this. The Big Ten just got bigger. Oregon University of Washington are now joining USC and UCLA to the conference. The Big 12 is getting back Colorado and now bringing on Utah, the Utes, Arizona State, Sun Devils, and the Arizona Wildcats. So what happens to the Pac-12? We don't know. But what we do know is that the ACC is considering Stanford and adding Cal. But we also know that the ACC is having some problems with its revenue with Florida State and a few others. Virginia and Carolina has also been disgruntled members. A lot of changes happening right now in the world of college sports, and the impact of the Power 5 conference, Pac-12 automatically gets based on the new playoffs, the Pac-12 would get an automatic bid. That would have to change because you're not having the same prominent schools that college football is a fan of. Stanford, is a prominent program education-wise, and you have Cal that has had some great alumni like Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch, two that's come to mind and stand out. Obviously, when you look at Stanford's alumni and its program, especially its academic program, but its football players, you have to first look at, obviously, John Elway, the great John Elway, Andrew Luck, I believe also comes out of that, Richard Sherman. So it's going to be an interesting move. Will the ACC, who right now there's some reluctance, there's some issues, are looking at roadblocks, I think, that has happened. We're not sure if Cal and Stanford will be added. Is it worth it to the ACC? We don't know. We know the travel will be there. I think education-wise, obviously Stanford and Cal bring, some great pedigree to the ACC, joining the likes of Duke and Carolina, and I think Boston College. Virginia Tech has a good engineering program, and others obviously there. We can't forget about our Clemson Tigers down here in the South. And so it'll be interesting. But we appreciate you guys once again for listening to this show, as always. And we will see you guys on the next. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Tax Doctor. We want to thank My Virtual Docs. We want to thank CAG Health Inc. CAG Health Inc. care with all of their nationwide PPO healthcare plans and partnerships with Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Cigna, and the others. We want to also thank veteran card donations. There's so many to thank. I mean, we want to thank the Beneficiary Liquidity Plan, which you didn't hear today. We want to thank the Super Roth. The Super Roth, up and away. The Super Roth is here to stay. And if you're looking to contribute more to your retirement, trying to make some catch-ups, that may be a really good place to do so. That also offers insurance in its place as well. So the Super Roth is here to save the day. This is Wealth Coach Steve signing off until next week, or to the next time we do this. Gets real busy sometimes. We want to thank all of the people that's supporting Sports Bucks with Steve. And now we're over 5,000 subscribers, man. That is tremendous. I want to thank you guys for listening and loving and appreciating the show. That's amazing. Salute to everyone that is a Sports Bucks with Steve subscriber. 5,000 plus in 5 months is amazing. And so I really want to thank you guys for that. And I want to just say thank you for all the radio stations and everyone that plays Sports Bucks. And with that, we're going to say good night and good afternoon. See you soon.